what I didn't know about you before I reached out to you was that you were part of the Traverse Bay Bands of Ottawa
Yeah,
and
well,
the Grand River Band.
yes.
Are these two separate tribes?
So they're both Odawa. They're just different parts of that,
Ottawa.
different tribes. Yeah. So I'm Little Traverse Bay Band of Odawa Indians and then Grand River Band. So different areas, different locations, but I live on the ancestral lands of the Little Traverse Bay Band of Odawa.
Mm, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to ask a very ignorant question and I'm going to put myself out there just so that we can all make an example out of it. So I saw that on your website it says Indians, but is that really how you identify?
So many people do. I mean, our tribe even has that word in our name. So, politically correct, I feel like it's fine. I usually use the word Indigenous or Native American, referring to other people within the tribe. I don't tend to use the word Indians, I guess, just in the name. But
Yeah.
I believe it's, that talk around that has changed a lot. There's a lot of tribes that have the word Indians as part of their name. So yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I wanted to ask how you felt about that because I mean there's a lot of I don't want to get into like a woke debate, but I think this goes beyond that because historically it's just like incorrectly identified people, and now we know uh, that they are Native Americans, that you are Native Americans, Indians are from India, and it's very clear, that distinction.
Sure. I think a lot of people are letting go of that narrative of having to be attached to it because there are bigger things that we need to address. We know who we are, and I think we're as a people very proud, but have a lot of humility about that. So I think it really has to do with where we're at in this day and age. We're in this time of the seventh generation, which is a prophetic teaching that we have. So in this time, it's really important that we focus on the greater healing. And so focusing on that word feels, maybe it's important to some people, and I wouldn't try to make them feel negatively about that. But I think with the work that I do and the work that a lot of people are doing within our community, it doesn't feel as important to
Hmm.
focus our energy and put all of that energy or um, time into trying to correct people. We have other bigger battles to deal with.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, you have to pick your priorities, and that's really not, like you said, one of them of all the things going on in the world. But yeah, so I'm happy to hear your opinion on that. Can you talk a little bit more about these influences in your life and in the work you do with healing?
Absolutely. So the ties that I feel towards my Indigenous heritage, living on my ancestral lands, are pretty profound. As a young child, I knew at a very young age that I had a greater calling than what I was even aware of, as far as connecting and reconnecting my family to our culture. So my family was affected by boarding school, and the boarding school epidemic that happened within the United States and Canada. In Canada, they refer to as a residential schooling. Children were taken from their homes and assimilated into Catholic um, boarding schools. So they were kept away from their family. They were taught English. They were not allowed to talk in their language. If they did, horrible things could happen to them. They weren't allowed to practice their culture, their traditions, um, everything that they knew, all of those tools and resources that they had to be well and balanced and to live in that were taken away from them. And so that created this ripple effect of intergenerational trauma. And try not to get emotional because I sometimes find myself feeling pretty emotional about this. But there isn't a native family on this continent that hasn't been affected in some way by these indigenous or these residential and boarding schools. Um, and what that led to in that ripple effect was a disconnect, not having those tools and resources, the language, the ceremonies, the traditions, even the food. Um, so reconnecting to our culture felt really important to me. And it didn't feel like it was just for me, it was for my family too. And the more that I connected to that as I grew older, the more I felt that um, importance and that vital, it was just so vital to have that. I didn't know anything about our teachings, about our prophecies. I had no idea that I was like part of this awakening that was happening. And so many of us in my generation. So, kind of going back, going to school, I was very Western dominant thinking, went to school for athletic training, really focusing on the anatomy and the physiology of the body. I was just so enamored and excited to learn about the body and how it worked on just like an intracellular level and everything. Um, but over some time, I realized that that wasn't my calling. Went to school for massage, and that was really where I started connecting to myself even more. Um, Again, in the beginning of my practice, I was very, we're taught this Western dominant way of thinking. So it was really more connected to the body, the physical body, what I could feel, what I could palpate, because that made sense to me. But as time went on, there were things that I could feel that I couldn't make sense of um, in the knowledge that I had. So I had to dig a little bit deeper. And so that was kind of where that interconnection between my culture and the things that I was learning academically started to really integrate. Um, and thankfully, I've had some very beautiful, wonderful elders that have taught me amazing things about energy and um, creating safe spaces for community. Um, but I would say being an Indigenous woman and being now in a place where I fully trust my intuitiveness, we have this as women, not just Indigenous women, all women, we have this really deep, innate well of intuition. And it's a very strong aspect of being in that feminine energy. So I think stepping back into the culture and regaining some of those tools, starting to learn more of my language. I don't speak fluently. It's a really challenging language to learn, but I try to integrate it as much as I can in my daily life. Um, and connecting with my elders and really making sure that I'm efforting to sit with them, be in ceremony, listen to them, because everything that I learn from them, I carry into my practice. The way that I can connect with people, the way that I can connect to myself and then to the world around us. And really looking at the healing aspect of like, it's not just one person. There's this ripple effect that happens after you touch yourself and you heal within yourself that just continues to grow. And then the more you can share that healing energy with the people around you, again, that person gets to grow there well.
Mm-hmm.
So I've integrated it in lots of different ways. I'm very active in ceremony and I learn a lot in ceremony, not necessarily about massage or, um, biofield tuning or anything like that. Though I do have a dear friend and I who like to bring those things to ceremony so we can share those tools and resources with our elders and the people that come to ceremonies so that we can just kind of integrate the different the ways of healing. And it's always very welcomed and so appreciated. So,
Yeah, wow. Thank you for sharing all that because there's so much that we don't know. There's so much of so much from everywhere, from everyone, and had no idea about the boarding schools or things like that. That sounds really awful,
yeah, a
like
lot of
really
people
awful.
don't. It's a conversation that needs to be had. And a lot of times when it's had, it's in this energy of anger. And one thing that I'm learning in living that good life, it's Manon Bamazelin, is really trying to live with love in your heart.
Hmm.
Bad things happen. but we have a choice now what we do with that and how we carry ourselves as we move forward. Um, so I really try to have love in my heart when I talk about it. I get emotional sometimes because when you see the ripple effect happen in your family, when you see the way that boarding schools or, just children being taken from their homes and put in environments that aren't nurturing, they don't know how to nurture their children the same way as they would have had they been nurtured by their parents. So there's this disconnect. There's this void that happens. And within that void, it usually gets filled with something what we would perceive as negative: drugs, alcohol, um, gambling, you name it. Um, and that's very prevalent in many of our families. And I've seen drugs and alcohol um, as a coping mechanism within my family. So it feels really important to me to reconnect as much as I can, not just for myself, but I have a daughter who will be almost 14. So for her, and then even, my parents, and giving them, my mom mainly, who is Indigenous, giving her some of those cultural teachings that she can use for herself, whatever feels right, whatever feels good, because we're all on different levels. We all connect in different ways. And I just want to look at myself in this picture as someone who can connect the dots for somebody or fan that flame for them if they're trying to connect. I don't know, even pretend to know anything and all the things about my culture. I'm still very much in the learning aspect myself. And that's why going to ceremony feels so important, and sitting with my elders feels so important, to just gain as much knowledge as I can while they're here, and also willing to sit with me or sit with, some of my peers who go to ceremony regularly with me. Feels really important. And we're in this time, like I said, of the seventh generation. And so or the seventh fire prophecy is what we are in. And it's a time of this great awakening that's happening within culture, or humanity, coming into this healing and recognizing there's kind of two ways you can go. You can go, away from living in this good life, this good way, um, focusing on greed and, too much money and all of the things that are wrapped up in that aspect. Or you can take more of the spiritual journey, and reconnecting for us to our culture and our language, our traditions, our ceremonies, our foods, even. So feels important to show up in the best way that I can and continue learning.
And how did you connect? Like, if there was a disconnect, how did you find your way back to it?
A lot of bravery. um, I stepped in to the community by myself. As far as like stepping into our tribal community, we were on the outskirts, just, from the outside. We went to the tribal clinic to have, our um, medical cares taken care of, or needs taken care of. And we did certain things, but there was no integration of the culture really and the ceremonies. And I felt such a huge pull towards that. I mean, it was something that I couldn't help. Like I couldn't not do it. Um, and there were little things here and there. Um, but I really remember specifically a time where I called a friend of mine who is part of the tribe, and I was like, I'm not okay, and I need someone to come over to my house and smudge my house, because I didn't know how to smudge at the time in the right way, which that's a whole nother story for a different time. But I felt very vulnerable asking for help, but also like I knew I needed someone to come over to my home and show me how I could connect with my culture in a way that I hadn't before. And so she got a hold of an elder in our community. He came to my house. He smudged my entire house. He smudged me and my family. And then he ate dinner with us. And it was just like, I could have sat there all night and listened to him talk. I was like a little child, just my inner child was just coming out like, this is what I've been craving. This is what I've been waiting for. And he left and I just bawled because I just felt like connected for the first time in a way that I hadn't been. So that moment was very significant for me, feeling that connection. And also, he just made me feel so comfortable that it was like, oh, like I just felt so included in our culture. And the fear that I had before that, it it, it felt unimportant anymore. And so I just started um, doing things around him because I felt comfortable with him at the time. Um, and started doing sweat lodge and started doing ceremony and ended up meeting the mentor that I have now through him. Him and his wife, my mentors now, are just amazing people and very significant elders in our community who just do wonderful things for our people. One of my elders is very active in boarding school um, aspect
It's
of
still
healing.
happening?
Oh no, it's not anymore. But more
Okay.
about so she works for in child welfare. So really trying to place um, children who have been put in foster care with Native families, so that they can still. It's not further removing them from our culture. It's keeping them close with Indigenous families so that they can be exposed to the language or the culture, the foods, ceremonies, and just that way of life. Um, and then the other gentleman or her husband is a governmental and spiritual leader in the community. Very wonderful
Cool.
people that I just love spending time with, and I'm very grateful for them to be in my life. And I would say the two of them have created such a warmth around my curiosity that I don't feel scared to be curious anymore. I don't feel scared to step into places that I don't know if I belong, or if I'll be accepted, because I have felt such warmth and such care and such um, like tender-hearted connection. So I feel like so many of our elders are also waking up to that seventh fire prophecy, and their part in it is teaching us the ways that have been lost, giving us those teachings and um, sharing with us as much as they can about our culture.
That sounds really amazing and powerful.
It is, and everything that I learned from them integrates into my practice when it comes to the way I can hold space for people, um, energy-based healing, being able to know who I am. I mean, it's kind of hard to do energy work and be tapped into your energy and your intuition when you don't know who you are. So it's been very
Yeah.
helpful in finding my own way so that I can fit into my piece of the puzzle while I'm here.
And what led you to the work that you do in somatics and energy now? Like, why?
Yeah. So
What's the why behind
the
that?
why, I would say there's a couple whys that all integrated. Um, I believe in divine timing. I believe the creator has a divine plan, and I don't now perceive things as bad anymore, or good or bad. I really try to live into this mindset or subscribe to this mindset of a duality. There's a light and a dark to everything. Um, Many years ago, it was after I had gone to school for massage. I had my practice going and everything was going great. And then I got really, really sick, um, really sick, and could not get a proper diagnosis for many years. And once I finally did, it was chronic Lyme disease. And so at that point, I was only focusing my practice on massage. It was so physically demanding of me. It was just depleting. It was depleting my energy, but also like my physical body was starting to deteriorate from being sick more and more. So I had to take a little bit of time off to do some healing. And while I was doing that healing, I was just trying all of the modalities that I possibly could to be well, to find balance in my body. Um, and so many of the things that I do now were things that help me find wellness again. So I got into sound therapy. I bought my first set of bowls for myself. Um, it was a profound experience to have those bowls and to be able to use them um, for my own healing and just recognize like the power that they had and how wonderful and charged I felt when I played. And I knew I wanted to be able to share that with people. And the beautiful thing about that was at that time, I just left my bowls out on the floor and I'd play them every night. My daughter was very young at the time. And I told her if she wanted to play, that she could. And she knew what the rules of respect were for them. And she was very careful and delicate with them. So she's actually works with me now and does sound therapy. And she's just had this like very natural way of connecting with the bowls and just feeling and trusting her intuitiveness when it comes to when we play together. It's just so wonderful. So now we each have our own set and we travel all over Michigan, um, soon to be out of state too, and play for communities in all sorts of ways. So the sound healing has been huge, and the same with the biofield tuning. I started doing that on myself. Um, I had it done a few times, um, like coupled with a massage, and I always felt so drawn to that frequency healing. Um, and there's something that feels like, oh, well, it's not really doing anything because I don't even hear it. But once I started learning about frequency and frequency healing just from the sound bowls and doing my own training and really getting involved in that, I was like, how can I ignore this? This is so powerful and such a non-invasive way to create balance in the body, especially for people who can't receive touch or for people who are,
Right.
uh, there are some people who have been abused in ways where receiving touch feels unsafe. And so having these modalities to be able to bring balance into the body without having to even do a laying on of hands can be really powerful. So those are,
How is the biotuning? Is that with the fork?
yeah, so it's using tuning forks. I wish I had one with me here.
Yeah, me too.
Here. Using tuning forks to create every part of our body has a frequency. As a human, as a whole, we give off a vibration. But then every aspect of us, every body part has its own frequency, but so do our chakras. And so I really like to focus on chakra balancing and creating balance within those systems in our body so that everything's working the way it's supposed to, the chi's flowing, the energy's flowing in the right ways so that we can live our best lives and feel good. So yeah, when you use the tuning forks, they create you can't always hear it, but it's a frequency. Um, and usually I'm placing it on the body where those chakras are, and it helps to retune. So sometimes we get affected by internal or external um, variables and will become out of tune. So the tuning forks help to bring back that frequency, bring back that healthy vibration into those parts of us. And in this case, really working with the chakras. And my bowls are also all tuned to 432 hertz, which are the um, the healing sounds of the chakra bowls.
Mhm. I wonder, do you find any crossover or similarities? Like, how do you pronounce it? Odawa,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yes.
Do they have chakra equivalent beliefs?
Um, I'm sure there are more teachings that I have to learn that would create an even deeper understanding of the knowledge that I have. I'm also very much aware and attuned to like blood memory. And so the things that I have learned, I think there are some things that I feel that I wasn't taught. There are things that get passed down through our blood from our ancestors there's this deep knowing, this deep wisdom that they share with us. And a lot of times, kind of talking about boarding school and talking about all these forms of trauma, we focus on that trauma as being the main source of what we got from our ancestors. But the fact that we're here and we're living and breathing means that they didn't just pass down trauma, they passed down resilience, they passed down strength, and all of these beautiful aspects of why we are still here and how we survived through this massacre of our people. And so I would love to learn more and more and more about that connection, and even tapping into different tribes, because different tribes have different teachings and not all tribes believe the same thing. And so I would love to spend more time even with people outside of my tribe to learn just what their knowledge is and their belief systems. And I would like to get a shirt that says praise well with others, because it's, when we're connecting with the creator, it really doesn't matter how we get there. We're getting to the divine energy, that divine sacred energy. And that's really what is the important part. So I like to know and learn about other people's journey and how they get there. I have a deep curiosity. So I definitely think that's an aspect that I'll continue to learn and feed into, because so many different tribes have just things that I don't even know about that I would just absolutely love to learn. So
Yeah, I feel you on that. I just love exploring and learning. And for me, like you, energy, I'm just so drawn to it. And like when you just said, the way we connect to the divine, as long as we're connecting to it, we connect in different ways. I was thinking back to a frequency, like it's a feeling. We may not be able to label it the same way, but we might, who knows, we might feel.
yeah,
When I say the divine to you and you feel something in your body, I may feel it in the same place.
exactly. Yeah. I think it's a profound journey for each of us and how we get there. And there's a reason why there's so many different ways to connect, because everybody connects differently. And I don't like to pretend that the way that I connect is the right way. It's just the way that I know and the way that makes sense to me and feels natural. It feels intuitive. It feels like this is just the way it is for me. But I also am not um, I have enough humility to understand that other people's journey is just as beautiful. And I'd like to know about them. I'd like to know their journey and how they get there. And I think what that does is it creates a feeling of unity instead of separation, because we can all believe in the same thing. Maybe we call it something different. We arrive there differently. But at the end of the day, we're arriving there. So um, being able to connect on our differences and use that as a way to build community and build relations and bridge the gaps between people is such a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yesterday, I was watching an interview with somebody who was Sikh, and I didn't know much about it. So I was like, what is Sikhism? Just like looking it up, like, what does it mean? And I didn't go too deep into it, but I really enjoyed that. I read they seek to promote unity and harmony and just this really beautiful. And I'm like, isn't that what we're all? I mean, hopefully, that's what we're seeking.
Yeah.
You know?
I think where there are bridges that are not connecting is where there's trauma, where there's
Yeah.
been hurt and there's been pain. And I think that's why I do what I do, because I want to connect people and I want people who are feeling unwell to feel the fullest version of themselves, because that version of themselves is their most authentic state. And the highest, strongest energy that we can emit is authenticity. And that is something that it just won't leave my brain when I think about how to help people, how to serve people. I want people to be able to feel authentic in their expression and the way they live their life and the way they connect with themselves and others around them. And so giving them safe spaces to find them their authentic self feels like that is my purpose. That is why I'm
Yeah.
here. Um, and I believe a lot of the hardship that I went through in my life with chronic illness and, learning my own, um, learning some of my own faults through different aspects of my childhood, creating unhealthy behaviors and patterns and people pleasing and, just different things and having abusive relationships. It all came to be part of my journey so that I could connect with people better, so that I can have more empathy, more compassion, and a more understanding, and say, never try to compare my journey or someone else's journey to each other, but just saying, I understand you and I feel you and I'm here. And just letting people feel held, letting them feel connected, and letting them feel safe. Because many of us don't really have that in our life, especially those things all together. So
Mm.
being able to really have that to share with other people feels like I love that. It creates synergy. It creates energy for me to be able to do that. It doesn't ever
And-
take away.
yeah. And how does all of this tie into the retreats that you lead or host,
So
co-facilitate?
yeah, so I do co-facilitate retreats and then I do some on my own as well. Um, the work that I do on my own is a lot of what we've talked about is integrated into the work that I do. So I've also been trained in psychosomatic modalities. So it's a way of becoming reintegrated with the mind and body after trauma, abuse, um, different things that lead to dissociation of the mind and body. And
Mhm.
so, what I feel is really important in the work that I do, especially in the retreats, is you have a longer length of time to work with people and you can have such profound happenings um, in those consecutive days together where you're laying down new neural pathways. And what that does is actually allows for healing, creates new pathways in the brain so that maybe you did have a really intense trauma um, and it's affected the way your brain has worked and the belief system that you have and the narrative that you have about you and your life. What I try to do is create a safe space and use the different tools that I have through psychosomatics, um, through energy healing, through sound to allow for people to create their own narrative. They can rewire their brain through these processes that I do to, it's not that they forget about the experience, it's still there, but the pathway through the brain from the trauma to the thought is no longer the same. So you lay down this fresh neural pathway and can have a new narrative. Like, I see how this affected me, but I can see why, and I can see how I can move forward now because I've created a level of clarity. So in my retreats, especially the work I do on my own with my clients, it's a very intimate small group, a retreat setting because I also like to make sure that I have time to work individually with each client, um, and really giving them that one-on-one chance to be held in space alone. But there's something so profoundly beautiful about being held in space with other women, witnessing each other and your humility and your vulnerability and watching these women step into their authentic self, maybe showing up as the best version of themselves in that moment, but then like really just doing this work and saying yes to busting down these walls of trauma or um, narratives, past narratives that are no longer serving them. And they're keeping them in these stuck cycles of, um, kind of perpetual ways of thinking or behaviors or patterns. So there is a beautiful experience on my end as the facilitator to watch these women go from, the versions of themselves they show up as and just stepping into this most profound version of themselves, this authentic energy, this feminine energy balancing that feminine, masculine inside. We do some work around that as well. Um, and then having sound therapy every night to, I like to end with sound therapy, doing a sound bath, because I feel like in a retreat, you're doing so much work. There's a lot of efforting that is happening while you're working through different aspects of trauma. Some of it can be like dyad work, where you're talking back and forth with another person and essentially helping each other find clarity within our own minds or in their own minds. Um, and so uh, having that moment at the end to just be and just lay there and to receive, and that having those sound frequencies really be the catalyst for continuing to let that healing within their brains happen, those neural pathways, and just letting the sound frequencies go wherever they're needed in the body. It's just a really powerful way to integrate the healing work that we do and make it so that it doesn't feel so taxing and so overwhelming, because sometimes it can feel intense. Going to retreat, there's lots of
Yeah.
different retreats. If you want to just go to the spa and relax, that's a totally different kind of retreat. Coming in and working with me is really about finding yourself, finding clarity, and sometimes it can be uncomfortable getting to that point. But one thing that I feel very confident in is being able to hold that safe space for women to do that work and to be fully present for them in my heart, in my mind, in my body, in my soul, so that I can create that safe space and intuitively know if I need to step in for certain aspects of healing, or do I let them feel this and um, move through it in their own way. So I think each practitioner really follows their gut instinct. At least I hope they do. Um, but I really enjoy these small, intimate groups, because it does create a really strong sense of safety within the group too. Because the other women they're all helping each other heal. They're all holding and witnessing each other, and that's where that synergy happens with women. We get together and we're in those spaces together, and um, it's magic. I've got goosebumps just thinking about it. It's just
Yeah.
such a profound thing to witness. Um, and, though I'm not participating in all of the healing modalities myself, like each time I hold space, like I'm growing in a way. I'm getting to experience the synergy too. And like, that's so exciting. It's so amazing to witness and to be a part of that.
Yeah. I also prefer small, intimate groups, especially
Mhm.
for healing, just because a
Mhm.
lot of the things that are coming up are really private. Like you said,
Yeah.
it's very vulnerable, it's very scary.
Yeah.
So it's scary enough to do that with one person or 5 to 8 people. But if you've got like a room of 15 women, I might not be able to unload everything that I need to in order to grow or move past something.
Absolutely. So when I co-facilitate, there is a little bit of a difference. So sometimes I will help hold space for a larger group. I have a girlfriend, a dear friend of mine. Her and I are co-facilitating horse retreats together. So she is a well-renowned horse trainer. She trains trainers. She's just profound. Her name's Rachel Ori. Um, and so she had approached me and asked me if I would help her run these retreats together. And it was like one of the fastest yeses I've had in a long time. Just knowing her and knowing her passion about what she does, and then also understanding like her vision and how I could be a part of it. And it just fit together so well. So when we work together, we do groups of 12, and
Okay.
um, but we split into groups of 6. So
Mm.
there's still that small group setting in some of that harder, more emotional work that you would do with me. And then there's small group setting that goes with her, and they do a small group training so she can be present for all of the riders at the same time. And then we would swap groups like in the afternoon. and do basically the same thing, but just with the second group, and then come together in the evening, sharing all of our meals together, sharing somatic movement in the morning. So some gentle movement, doing some shaking and tapping and different ways to kind of, again, rewiring the nervous system, really creating safety within our bodies. And then after um, lunchtime, we will do in the evening time individual sessions with everybody. So each person gets one individual session with me, and each person will get one individual session with her. So lots of one-on-one time with each of us for everybody involved, which is awesome. And then again, integrating at the end with the sound bath.
And that sounded weird. I was like, but that's not how I meant for it to come out. I was gonna ask about the horse therapy. We were talking about it a little bit before, but
Yeah.
you said it was about strengthening the connection with the rider and the horse. And the first thing that came to mind was that scene in Avatar where they're all going for their flying dragons or whatever they're called, and like making the bond. Like that to me feels so.
It's a good visual. It's a
Yeah, I don't
good,
know why I feel that, but I
yeah,
feel that like making the bond with something, you know?
absolutely. So the work that Rachel does is super profound because she mixes this like very technical aspect of the work that she does with the spiritual aspect. And she just blends it together so beautifully. And that's why I knew I had to work with her, because she's not just a horse trainer who doesn't know how to connect with her horse. She's a horse trainer that knows how to connect, not just physically, but energetically and spiritually to her animal. And witnessing that is profound. And the way she can help people do that is also just an amazing sight to see. So, um, working with horses is just such a beautiful thing, because when you're riding a horse, they're like a natural lie detector. If you're not feeling balanced in yourself, they're going to sense that, and it's going to come out through their behavior. And so, if you're looking to attune to yourself on a deeper level, working with a horse can be one of the best ways to do that. Because if you're not balanced, your horse is going to let you know. You can't lie to yourself anymore. Um, so I think the work that we do is so complementary to each other, because they can work with her and their animal, their beloved companion, and find, okay, where is it that we're disconnected? What is it that I'm missing? And then my aspect would be, how can we strengthen that aspect of you? How can we tap into this leadership role within yourself of creating a nurturing, feminine, loving connection with your horse, but also having a balance of that masculine leader. Um, so that's what I enjoy helping women find that in those retreats that we do together.
And when is the next one? Or when?
April 2025. So we haven't picked the exact dates yet. And the only reason that we haven't picked the dates yet is because I will be fasting this spring. So part of our cultural teachings is there's a rite of passage, and that rite of passage essentially looks like going out in the bush, out into the woods for 4 days, 4 nights by yourself with no food or water. You have the medicines you need, as far as in our culture, we use a lot of like sama, which is tobacco, wingush, which is sweetgrass, yijik, which is cedar, and muscadine, which is sage. So we have our medicines, and I'll have other medicines with me too, but those are the four main medicines that we carry in our bundle. Um, and essentially, I'll be going out there for spiritual clarity, to connect with the divine, to be humbly in his presence without food or water, and to sacrifice my comforts to receive whatever it is that I'm meant to receive while I'm out there. So I've had to kind of figure out, okay, when am I going to be doing this? Connecting with my mentor, my elder. We often call them sponsors, that are going to be, we call it putting him out. Like, she's going to put me out, like out in the woods. So I'm
Okay.
getting put out by my main female mentor, who I trust, and such a beloved um, auntie and uh, spiritual connector for me. So yeah, we're shooting for April of 2025, and my next individual solo retreat will be this coming January, actually, in Walloon Lake, Michigan.
Okay. And where's the other one is in Florida?
Yes, Micanopy, Florida, which is like north of Ocala, south
Okay.
of Gainesville. Hmm.
Oh, nice. I know where that is. Hmm.
Beautiful horse country. I had never been up
Yeah.
there until she invited me. My daughter and I came and stayed at the farm, and just, oh, it was wonderful. It's such a beautiful place. And there was a lot of mosquitoes at the time, but that was just
Oh,
the,
yeah.
the season we were in. So can't get around it when you're in that environment.
Yeah. Florida is all about the skeeters, as they call. Hmm? Like, I'm not sure if that comes from the north or the south, because I have family in the north also, and I don't think my family in the south ever called them skeeters. Um, so I wanted to also talk to you about the nonprofit work that you're doing, because we were talking about how a lot of times you want to share this with your community, but people are not in a space to be able to go on retreat, maybe financially or other reasons.
Mhm. Yeah, so I'm really excited to be on this journey right now. I just received all the paperwork from my tribe, the filing my nonprofit through my tribe here in Petoskey or in Harbor Springs. Um, so I just have so much excitement about this to be able to offer. Um, okay, I have to let the cat out of the bag. So I was going to create this nonprofit as the name Seventh Fire Kwewik, which means Seventh Fire Women, because I really just saw what I could do. Like, I can hold space for women. And I was kind of, I think, in this limiting mindset of I have to do it all by my own, by myself. Like, I'm the only one that'll be able to hold the space. And then a few months ago, I had a dream. And in that dream, there was a man that came to me who was looking to do the same work that I do in his own way. Not the same as me, but creating these safe spaces for men. And I woke
Mm,
up and I was like, I can't call it that. Like, this is so much bigger. This vision, this dream that I've had is bigger than what I'm allowing myself to be open to. So I put tobacco down, salmon down, and I asked the creator to guide me into whatever direction it was that I needed to go with this, because it isn't about me. I am I am thinking about this. It's channeling through me, but it isn't about me. It's about who can we serve and how can we serve them. And as much work as I've done around intergenerational trauma healing, I've done a lot of different trainings and gone to different not ceremonies, seminars to strengthen my knowledge and to become more aware of not just trauma, but also healing in Indian country. That is one of the things you'll hear us say is Indian country, just spanning our whole community as a whole. And it feels really important to not discard or not include men in that healing, because without our men, without our warriors, without our Ogechi Dao, we don't have that safe container for the feminine, for the
mm.
female. And so many of us
Well,
women have had to step into those masculine roles. And so I was so grateful for that, because I'm not going to lie, I've been dragging my feet on filing the paperwork, because I don't know, I'm a firm believer. If something doesn't feel right, you've got to trust it. And there was just something I was caught up on. And I prayed and I'm like, is this me procrastinating? Is this fear getting in my way of moving forward? There was no fear coming up. It was just like, you just have to wait. You have to be patient. You have to give yourself some time to let the creator work his ways and to be receptive to the messages and the signs. And so when I had that dream, it's like, okay, I get it now. I get why I needed to wait. I understand. And then I was just full of gratitude, because had I jumped on it, I probably could have figured out a way to make it work, but the name wouldn't have portrayed what we were doing, because we're not just seven fire women. It's all of us. Um, So now it will be seventh fire synergy. So seventh fire referring to the prophetic teaching, and then synergy. Um, I mean, the word in itself is explanatory, but creating energy together in our healing and being in sacred spaces together, um, allowing for the traumas that we've had in our life to be the catalyst for just very profound synergistic experiences with other people, bridging the gaps, healing together. I don't think I've ever been as passionate about anything as I get when I think about this work. And why I want to do this as a nonprofit is so that so many of us in the Indigenous tribes throughout US and Canada live under the poverty level. So being able to find safe spaces to put ourselves in can be almost non-existent. So it feels really important to remove those barriers, those financial barriers, for people to receive the healing that they so desperately need. And so many of them desire. They want to heal. They just don't have the resources. They don't have the tools or the people to guide them. Just holding that safe space and letting them know it's okay to not be okay for a little while. And sometimes that's what you need when you're working toward your healing. So what I'm seeing now is so much bigger than what I was seeing at the beginning of this vision. And what a blessing the patients have like paid off in so many ways. But one thing that I'm really excited about, and not just the retreat form. So I would love to do the work that I do with women now and scale that to work with Indigenous women and really focusing on our seventh teachings, our seven grandfather teachings, and how to live in balance and how to find different ways that are free to welcome safety in our bodies. Things like tapping, neuromuscular facilitation. Um, there's just so many resources that aren't. You don't need a tool and you don't need money. So just educating them on some of those things that can really make a huge impact on creating that safety. Because part of it is you're in this safe container, but you eventually have to go home. So
Yep.
how can you take what you learned here? How can you integrate the work that you've learned here, the resources and the tools into your life when you go back? Because many of them are going to be going back to very dysfunctional homes, very dysfunctional communities, families, abuse, different things like that. So giving them, I'd like to consider it fanning the flame. We all have this deep burning flame, this desire, this energy inside of us. And how can we create this fanning of the flame within them that when they leave, that flame still burns just as brightly and they feel connected to themselves. Um, that's the work that I feel called to do, and not just like a retreat type setting for non-Indigenous people, but really holding that space for me if I were to be holding by myself in my community, it would be frowned upon if I held space for just men. So I'll be holding space for women. And that's wherever that man is on his way, bend a knee coming in. I just can't wait for that bridging of the gap for our male community as well. And then the other aspect of that will be sound baths. So when we're not doing retreats, being able to do sound baths for the different communities. So going to the different Indigenous tribes throughout. I mean, my brain is no longer just thinking Michigan. I'm thinking all over the US and Canada, being able to bring this frequency healing to as many people as we can fit in a room. And so we can hold these spaces, these safe spaces for people, and be able to affect, a larger group of people on this one aspect of sound, and sharing that together and creating that co-created experience with each person.
I really love that you're doing this. It sounds like something very special, very needed, and I would love for you to share with me and with Retreat Builder the nonprofit once it's ready.
Absolutely.
Uh, because then even people from other retreats
Mm-hmm.
who are doing it locally or just, want to contribute in some way can do that. And I really love that you're including men also. I mean, as a woman who has done a lot of work to heal the feminine, and I have been through this place of like wanting to focus on the feminine, and somewhere along the way I've also received this message like, hey, don't, this is important. It can't be one without the other. And
It
while
has.
there is a lot of, I mean, like they call it toxic masculinity, and sure, whatever. There's a lot of toxic femininity too
Mm-hmm.
in the world,
Mm-hmm.
but there are a lot of men that don't fit under that category, and they need love, they need support, they need to be held, they need to be witnessed for their sacred energy as well. And I think it's important to provide that space, whether you or the person in your dream. It's important.
I agree wholeheartedly. One of the things that feels so important here is in the work that I do with the psychosomatic accelerated evolution processes is really about like polarities and thinking about the balance of something. You know, there's a duality to everything. You can't have the masculine without the feminine. The masculine holds the space, the woman nurtures the space. You know, it's the soft and the hard, it's the safe and the nurture. And um as women as a whole, if we want to be able to be in our feminine fully, we have to have safe men to be around to fully drop into that space within ourselves. And as a single woman, this is something that I work on within myself for the last 4 years of solitude that I had been in very intentionally, after leaving a very abusive marriage, and understanding that it's so important to create that feminine energy within myself, if I want to call that in. But there has to be a masculine energy at the other side to match with. So especially within our community as Indigenous people, having that healing, we call them Ogichida, our warriors, that warrior spirit, having that balance of male energy is so important, and it's part of our teaching. So it only made sense when I woke up and I was just like, felt so like, I don't want to use the word dumb. I just felt like I had put my blinders on and I was only seeing a very small aspect of the dream that I had had. I wasn't expanding and really calling out to what is the bigger picture here. And I'm grateful that I had that patience, and I trust that I don't think it'll be just one man. I like what I'm seeing is lots of people being able to hold these safe spaces and being a part of this nonprofit, and maybe branching out bigger and bigger into different communities and being able to do those sound healings and being able to hold those retreats, whether it's a 4-day retreat or you're just doing a day retreat where people are coming in and getting to spend a whole day learning. That's a lot of what I do, even with like corporate retreats.
Hmm.
It'll be like one day worth of learning. So you come in, I teach you as much as I can in that hour or 2 hours or 5 hours, whatever it is that um, the client signs up for, the corporation, or in this case, it would be the nonprofit, um, creating an experience to help people, um, again, balance their nervous system, giving them those tools to be able to use them outside of the retreat. So they're like, oh, I'm feeling stressed. What can I do? I feel dysregulated. What can I do for myself right now? I'm in my car. I got 10 minutes before my daughter comes out of school. I don't want her to step into this. How can I serve myself right now? How can I regulate myself? So giving people tools where they can help themselves do those things. Um, so yeah, I see that on a bigger scale, not just the two, me and another person. I see other people stepping in and using because there's so many talented, amazing healing arts practitioners within the Indigenous communities. I have a girlfriend, Courtney, who works for She does a lot of work for the Grand Traverse Bay Band of Odawa Indians in Traverse City, which is about an hour and a half from me. Um, just love the work she's doing. She's such an inspiration for me. And um, there's so many women like her and men that can know how to hold space. And I trust that the creator will align our paths when the time's right.
Sending you all the good vibes for all of those dreams.
Chimigwech.
Oh, how do you say that?
Chimigwech. It means like
Chimigwech.
big thanks. Yeah.
Chimigwech. Like, so, Kara, is there anything else that you'd like to share about retreats or about the work you do?
If anybody has questions, I'm always available for email, phone calls. Have a lot of passion about what I do, and I just love sharing it with people. So don't be afraid to connect. Don't be afraid to reach out with whatever question. And if I can't answer it, I'll do my best to put someone in front of you that has those answers, or guide you to somebody that does.
Okay. Thank you so much for being here and sharing everything that you did.
I really appreciate
Okay.
being here. So, Jimmy Quetch again.
Chimigwech. Okay.